My sister-in-law, the perfect widow, called me from her luxury trip, saying, "Just check on little Tina for me, she's been so quiet lately." But when I entered her house, the foul smell led me to a locked room. Inside, my 6-year-old niece was fighting for her life, dehydrated and barely conscious. She had left a note planted in my handwriting saying I couldn't take care of her anymore, to blame it all on me. I didn't panic. I called 911 immediately and recorded everything with my phone before touching anything. When paramedics arrived, they found my niece's condition and her planted evidence, but my call logs and timestamps proved I'd just arrived. Now she's blowing up my phone from her vacation, screaming. The phone rang at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. I remember the exact time because I was staring at my laptop screen, trying to meet a deadline for a client presentation. The caller ID showed Vanessa, Sil, and I almost let it go to voicemail. My relationship with my sister-in-law had been strained ever since my brother David died in that car accident 3 years ago. "Hey Vanessa," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Oh thank God, Lena." Vanessa's voice came through crystal clear, with what sounded like waves crashing in the background. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm having the most amazing time in Cabo. The resort is absolutely divine, and I've been so stressed lately that I just needed this break, you know?" I frowned. Vanessa had always been dramatic, but something felt off about her overly cheerful tone. "That's great, Vanessa. What can I do for you?" "Well, it's about little Tina. She's been so quiet lately, barely talking to me before I left. I'm worried she might be coming down with something. Could you just pop over and check on her? I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only family we have left, and I need to know she's okay while I'm here." My stomach dropped. Wait, where's Tina now? Who's watching her? Oh, she's at home. She's 7 now, Lena, very independent. I left her with enough food and she knows not to answer the door for strangers. I've only been gone since Monday evening, and I'm flying back Friday morning. Vanessa, you left the 7-year-old alone for 4 days? I was already grabbing my keys, my heart racing. She's fine. She's very mature for her age. I just want you to peek in on her, maybe take her some groceries. I tried calling the house this morning but she didn't answer, which is weird because she usually runs to the phone. I was already in my car, driving toward their house across town. I'm heading over there now. Vanessa, this is not okay. You can't leave a child that young alone. Don't be so dramatic, Lena. You never had kids, so you don't understand. Tina is perfectly capable. I'll call you later, okay? The spa appointment I booked is about to start. She hung up before I could respond. The drive to Vanessa's house took 20 minutes through traffic. The whole time, my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Vanessa had always been self-centered, but this was a new low, even for her. Since David's death, she'd been playing the part of the grieving widow perfectly in public, receiving sympathy and donations from the community, but I'd always suspected it was an act. David had confided in me before his death that their marriage was rocky. He discovered some financial irregularities in their joint accounts and was planning to confront Vanessa about them. He never got the chance. I pulled into their driveway and immediately noticed the mail overflowing from the mailbox and a package sitting by the front door. The yard looked neglected, and there were no lights on in the house despite the cloudy afternoon. My hands shook as I used the emergency key I'd taken from David's keychain after his death. He'd given it to me years ago when he and Vanessa first bought the house. The smell hit me the moment I opened the front door. It was a mixture of rotting food, human waste, and something else I couldn't identify. I covered my nose with my sleeve and called out, "Tina? Honey, it's Aunt Lena." Silence. I moved through the house, checking the obvious places first. The living room was messy but empty. The kitchen was worse, dirty dishes everywhere, spoiled food on the counter, and what looked like cereal spilled on the floor days ago. The refrigerator was nearly empty except for some moldy leftovers. "Tina." I called again, my voice echoing through the house. That's when I heard it, a faint whimpering sound coming from upstairs. I took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound and the increasingly awful smell. It led me to a door at the end of the hallway that I'd never noticed before. There was a padlock on the outside. My blood ran cold. I pounded on the door. "Tina. Are you in there?" A weak voice responded, "Aunt Lena?" I tried the padlock, it was secured tight. I ran downstairs and grabbed a hammer from David's old toolbox in the garage. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip it properly, but adrenaline gave me strength. It took several attempts, but I finally broke the lock. The door swung open, and the smell nearly knocked me over. Tina was huddled in the corner of what appeared to be a small storage room. She was wearing the same clothes she'd probably had on for days, soaked in her own urine. Her lips were cracked and dry, her eyes sunken. She looked like she'd lost at least 10 pounds from her already small frame. "Oh my God, Tina." I rushed to her, but she flinched away from me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I tried to be good. I tried not to make noise. That's when I noticed the piece of paper on the floor next to her. Even from a distance, I could see it was covered in handwriting that looked suspiciously like mine. Every instinct told me to scoop up my niece and rush her to the hospital, but something made me stop. This felt wrong. This felt planned. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Tina, honey, can you hear me? It's Aunt Lena. I'm going to help you, okay?" I spoke clearly toward my phone's microphone while keeping the camera focused on her condition and the room. I recorded the padlock I'd broken, the room's deplorable condition, and then carefully picked up the note with the tissue. As I suspected, it was written in handwriting that looked like mine, but wasn't quite right. I couldn't take care of her anymore. She was too much trouble. I'm sorry, Lena. My hands trembled as I read it aloud for the recording, making sure to capture the timestamp. Then I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Lena Park. I'm at 1247 Oakwood Drive. I found my 7-year-old niece locked in a room. She's severely dehydrated and appears to have been abandoned for several days. I need paramedics and police immediately. Ma'am, are you the child's guardian? No, I'm her aunt. Her mother is out of town and asked me to check on her. Please hurry, she's in bad shape. I stayed on the line with the operator while continuing to record everything. I was careful not to touch anything else or move Tina until professionals arrived. The paramedics arrived first, within 8 minutes. They immediately began assessing Tina's condition while I explained the situation. Her vital signs were dangerously low, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and what appeared to be the beginning stages of kidney failure. How long do you think she's been like this? One of the paramedics asked. Based on what her mother told me, possibly since Sunday. Today is Tuesday. Police arrived shortly after. Detective Martinez, no relation, despite the shared surname, took my statement while crime scene techs photographed everything. I showed them the recording I'd made and explained about the suspicious note. You did the right thing by not disturbing the scene, Detective Rowan Lee said. This note is clearly meant to implicate you. Can you think of why someone would want to frame you? I thought about my complicated relationship with Vanessa, about David's suspicions before his death, about the insurance money she'd received. But I stuck to the facts. My sister-in-law and I have had our differences, but I can't imagine why she'd do this. While we were talking, my phone started buzzing. Vanessa was calling. Answer it, Detective Rowan Lee instructed. Put it on speaker. Lena. Vanessa's voice was shrill. I just got the most terrible call from a neighbor saying there are ambulances at my house. What's happening? Is Tina okay? I looked at the detective, who nodded for me to respond. Vanessa, Tina is being taken to the hospital. She was locked in a room, severely dehydrated. Where are you exactly? What do you mean locked in a room? That's impossible. I'm in Cabo, at the resort. I told you that. This must be some kind of mistake. The paramedics are saying she's been without proper food and water for days. There's evidence that someone planned this, Vanessa. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, less panicked, more calculating. Lena, I need you to tell me exactly what you found. Are you sure you didn't? I mean, you've been under a lot of stress lately. Are you sure you remember everything correctly? Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. Even I was shocked by the implication. Vanessa, are you suggesting I hurt Tina? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that trauma can affect memory. Maybe you went to check on her and found her sick, and in your panic, you got confused about the details. There's a note, Vanessa. A note that looks like my handwriting saying I couldn't take care of her anymore. Another long pause. That's terrible. Someone must have broken into my house. Oh my God, what if they're still there? Lena, you need to get out of there immediately. Detective Rowan Lee took the phone from me. Ma'am, this is Detective Rowan Lee with the police. I need you to provide proof of your location for the past 3 days. What? Why would I need to prove anything? I'm the victim here. Someone broke into my house and hurt my daughter. Ma'am, we have evidence that suggests this was a planned event. We're going to need you to return immediately and cooperate with our investigation. I can't just leave. I have a flight booked for Friday. This is probably just a misunderstanding. Tina is a very imaginative child, she might have made up stories. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even faced with evidence, Vanessa was still trying to manipulate the situation. Vanessa, I said, taking the phone back. Your 7-year-old daughter almost died. Get on the next flight home. Don't tell me how to parent my child, Lena. You've never even had kids. You don't understand the pressure I'm under as a single mother. Detective Rowan Lee gestured for me to end the call. We have enough for now. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what we already knew: Tina had been severely neglected. She was suffering from dehydration, malnutrition, and had developed a kidney infection from being unable to properly use a bathroom. The psychological trauma would take much longer to heal. She keeps asking if she's in trouble, the social worker told me. She seems to think being locked in that room was punishment for something she did wrong. My heart broke. I sat with Tina while she received 4 fluids, holding her small hand and reassuring her that none of this was her fault. Aunt Lena, she whispered. Mommy said you were coming to take me away because I was bad. You're not bad, sweetheart. You're the best little girl in the world. But Mommy said you wrote a note saying I was too much trouble. I felt rage building in my chest. Tina, I would never write anything like that. I love you very much and you're never too much trouble. Over the next few hours, the full picture began to emerge. Vanessa had been planning this for weeks, possibly months. She'd been forging my handwriting by practicing with samples from birthday cards and thank you notes I'd sent. She deliberately scheduled her trip to Cabo to coincide with when she knew I'd be busy with a big work project, assuming I wouldn't check on Tina immediately. The plan was simple and diabolical: let Tina deteriorate to the point where intervention was necessary, plant evidence implicating me, and then return from her vacation to find her daughter had been abandoned by her unstable sister-in-law. She'd get sympathy, possibly more insurance money if things went really wrong, and I'd be out of the picture permanently. What she hadn't counted on was my quick thinking to record everything before touching anything, and the fact that modern technology makes it very easy to verify timelines and locations. Detective Rowan Lee called me that evening with an update. We've been in contact with a resort in Cabo. Vanessa checked in on Monday as she claimed, but here's the interesting part: she never actually stayed there. She checked in, took some photos by the pool and at the restaurant for her social media, then checked out the same evening and flew back to the US on the red-eye flight Tuesday morning. She's been in a hotel about an hour from her house since Tuesday afternoon. So she's been here since yesterday? It gets better. Hotel security footage shows her leaving Tuesday evening around dinner time and returning Wednesday morning, right around the time she called you. She was never at the resort when she made that call. She was probably sitting in the hotel parking lot, planning the perfect timing for you to discover Tina. I felt sick. She planned the whole thing. It looks that way. We've also found evidence that she's been researching your handwriting online. She made several purchases of practice workbooks and tracing paper using a credit card linked to her account. How did she think she'd get away with this? Honestly? If you hadn't been so careful to document everything, she might have. A lot of people in that situation would have grabbed the child first and asked questions later. The evidence would have been compromised, and it would have been your word against hers. That night, I stayed at the hospital with Tina. She was stable but would need to remain for observation for at least another day. I was dozing in the chair next to her bed when my phone started buzzing again. Vanessa was calling from what I now knew was her hotel room. Lena, I've been thinking about everything, and I realized there might have been a misunderstanding. I sat up straighter. What kind of misunderstanding? Well, I might have been more stressed than I realized when I left. Maybe I didn't prepare as well as I thought I did. And maybe that note. Maybe I was so overwhelmed that I wrote it and forgot. You know how grief can affect memory. She was trying to walk back her story, probably realizing the police were closing in. Vanessa, stop. Just stop. The police know you weren't in Cabo when you called me. They know you've been practicing my handwriting. They know you planned this. Silence. I don't know what you're talking about. You almost killed your own daughter to frame me. Your 6-year-old daughter, Vanessa. David's daughter. Don't you dare bring David into this. You think you're so perfect, don't you? You think you were his favorite sister, that he would have wanted you to raise Tina instead of me? The mask was finally slipping. This was never about David. This was about you being a narcissist who couldn't handle the responsibility of being a mother. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Everyone expects me to be the perfect widow, the perfect mother. Do you know how exhausting that is? Do you know what it's like to have everyone watching your every move, judging whether you're grieving enough or moving on too fast? So you decided to abuse your daughter and frame me for it? I never abused her. I needed a break. I needed someone to see that I couldn't do it alone. But everyone keeps telling me how strong I am, how lucky Tina is to have me. No one was helping. Vanessa, there are resources for struggling single mothers. There are family members who would help. You could have asked for help without traumatizing your child. Like you would have helped. You've been waiting for me to fail since David died. You've been watching, waiting for your chance to prove I'm a bad mother. I realized then that Vanessa had been living in a completely different reality, one where everyone was against her and she was the perpetual victim. I'm hanging up now, Vanessa. The police are looking for you. Lena, wait. We can work this out. We don't need to involve the police anymore. Tina is fine, right? She's going to be okay. We can just say it was a misunderstanding. Tina almost died. But she didn't. She's fine. Kids are resilient, Lena. She won't even remember this in a few years. The complete lack of empathy in her voice made me feel physically ill. Goodbye, Vanessa. She was arrested at her hotel that night. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and text messages from Vanessa. Apparently, she'd been allowed one phone call and had used it to call me, then somehow gotten access to a phone and continued calling. The messages were a mix of threats, pleading, and attempts at manipulation. Lena, you have to drop the charges. Think about what this will do to Tina, growing up knowing her mother is in prison. You're destroying our family over a misunderstanding. I'll tell everyone about your drinking problem. Yes, I know about it. David told me. Please, I'm begging you. I'll get help. I'll do therapy. Just don't let them take Tina away from me. You've always been jealous of me. This is your revenge for David choosing me over you. The last message was the most telling. Fine. If you want to play hardball, I'll tell everyone how you've been embezzling money from David's estate. I have proof. I screenshot everything and forwarded it to Detective Rowan Lee. The trial was set for 8 months later. In the meantime, Tina was placed in temporary foster care while the court decided on permanent custody. I immediately filed for guardianship, which Vanessa contested from jail. During this time, more details about Vanessa's plan emerged. She'd been setting up this frame job for months, possibly since the anniversary of David's death. She'd been gradually isolating Tina from other family members and friends, claiming she needed to protect her from people who didn't understand their grief. She'd also been spreading subtle rumors about my mental health, my drinking habits, I had maybe 2 glasses of wine per week, and my obsession with David's death. She'd been laying groundwork to make me seem like an unstable person who might snap and hurt a child. Most disturbing of all, investigators found a detailed timeline in her hotel room outlining exactly how she expected events to unfold. She'd calculated how long it would take for Tina to become seriously ill without making her condition life-threatening, when I would likely check on her based on my work schedule, and how long it would take for the evidence to be discovered. The plan was designed to make Tina sick enough to require hospitalization but not so sick that she'd suffer permanent damage, until things went wrong and she stayed away longer than planned. If I hadn't been so careful to document everything, if I hadn't immediately called 911, if I had just grabbed Tina and run to the hospital like any normal person would do, her plan would have worked. The community was shocked when the story broke. Vanessa had been everyone's favorite tragic figure, the beautiful young widow struggling to raise her daughter alone. She'd received thousands in donations, free meals, babysitting services, and endless sympathy. People I'd never met before stopped me in the grocery store to apologize for believing her lies about me. Apparently, she'd been telling people for months that I was becoming unstable and making concerning comments about Tina. What I hadn't realized was just how extensive Vanessa's campaign against me had been. Detective Rowan Lee showed me a folder thick with statements from neighbors, teachers, and family friends, all documenting conversations where Vanessa had expressed concern about my behavior. Mrs. Henderson from down the street told police that Vanessa had confided in her about my drinking problem and how I'd been obsessed with David since his death. She'd mentioned that I'd been calling late at night, crying about how much I missed him, and that she was worried I might do something desperate. None of this was true, of course. I'd spoken to Vanessa maybe 6 times in the past year and never late at night. I'd been grieving my brother, but I'd been seeing a therapist and handling it in healthy ways. Tina's kindergarten teacher, Miss Garcia, had been told that I'd been showing up at school asking strange questions about Tina's schedule and home life. She'd apparently been instructed to call Vanessa immediately if I ever tried to pick up Tina without permission. Again, this was completely fabricated. I'd been to Tina's school exactly twice, once for a Christmas program and once for a parent-teacher conference that Vanessa had specifically asked me to attend because she couldn't make it. The most disturbing revelation came from Vanessa's neighbor, Janet Walsh. She told police that Vanessa had been confiding in her for months about her fears that I was becoming unhinged and might try to hurt Tina. She was so scared, Janet told Detective Rowan Lee. She said Lena had been making comments about how Tina would be better off without her, how she could raise Tina better than Vanessa could. She even showed me some text messages that seemed really threatening. When police asked to see these messages, Janet couldn't produce them. Vanessa had apparently shown them to her on her phone but claimed she deleted them because they were too upsetting to keep. Of course, these messages had never existed. The pattern was clear. Vanessa had been systematically destroying my reputation in the community, creating a narrative where I was an unstable, jealous woman who posed a threat to her and Tina. She'd been setting up her frame job for months, ensuring that when the time came, everyone would believe I was capable of harming a child. What made it even more sickening was realizing how she'd used people's genuine compassion against them. These were good people who'd been trying to help what they thought was a struggling single mother. They'd been manipulated just as much as I had. Detective Rowan Lee explained that this level of premeditation would actually work in our favor during the trial. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of poor judgment, this was calculated, long-term psychological manipulation designed to destroy 2 lives. We see this sometimes in cases involving narcissistic personality disorder, he told me. The perpetrator doesn't just commit the crime, they spend months, even years setting up the perfect scenario where they can't be blamed for it. During the weeks leading up to the trial, I learned more about Vanessa's financial situation that added another layer to her motivation. While she'd been playing the struggling widow in public, she'd actually been living quite comfortably off David's life insurance money and the donations she'd received from the community. However, David's estate was still tied up in probate, and I was listed as the alternate beneficiary for his retirement accounts if something happened to both Vanessa and Tina. If Vanessa had been arrested for child abuse and Tina had been removed from her care, she would have lost access to Tina's survivor benefits. If something had happened to Tina, and I had been blamed for it, Vanessa would have inherited everything and been free to start over somewhere else with a new victim narrative. The forensic accountant who reviewed her finances found some disturbing patterns. She'd been spending money at an alarming rate, designer clothes, expensive vacations, a new car, all while claiming to be struggling financially. The Cabo trip alone had cost over $4,000, money she'd spent while her daughter was locked in a room without food or water. Even more disturbing was the discovery of a second bank account that Vanessa had opened in another state. She'd been slowly transferring money into this account over the past 6 months, building up what looked like a getaway fund. The account was opened under her maiden name, which she'd legally changed back to after David's death. Detective Rowan Lee theorized that if her plan had worked, if I'd been arrested and Tina had been placed in foster care or worse, Vanessa would have played the devastated mother for a few months, then quietly moved to another state to start fresh. She'd have had David's money, the insurance payout, and the sympathy of an entire community, plus a tragic story about losing her daughter to explain why she needed to start over. She'd probably have been married to some new victim within a year, he told me. These types of predators are very good at finding people who want to rescue them. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court painted a picture of someone who had been manipulating people her entire life. The psychologist, Dr. Eliza Grant, found evidence of antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic features. Essentially, Vanessa was incapable of genuine empathy and saw other people as objects to be used for her own benefit. She's extremely intelligent and charming when she wants to be, Dr. Foster explained to me. These are the characteristics that made her successful at manipulation, but they also make her particularly dangerous. She doesn't feel guilt or remorse the way most people do, so there's no internal mechanism stopping her from hurting others. The evaluation also revealed that Vanessa had been lying about her background for years. She told David, and everyone else, that she was an orphan who'd grown up in foster care. In reality, she'd been raised by loving parents who'd cut contact with her after a series of incidents involving theft, manipulation, and abuse of their trust. Her parents, still alive and living in Oregon, had been devastated to learn about what happened to Tina. They'd been trying to have contact with their granddaughter for years, but Vanessa had convinced David that they were toxic people who would be harmful to Tina. We tried to warn David, Vanessa's mother, Helen, told me during a tearful phone call. We could see what she was doing to him, how she was isolating him from his friends and family. But she was very good at making him think we were the problem. They'd been sending birthday and Christmas cards to Tina every year, but Vanessa had been intercepting them. When police searched her house, they found a box hidden in her closet containing dozens of unopened cards and letters from Tina's maternal grandparents, along with photos and small gifts. Tina had been told that her maternal grandparents were dead. Learning about these additional layers of deception made me realize just how extensively Vanessa had been controlling and manipulating everyone around her. David, Tina, her parents, the community, we'd all been pawns in her elaborate game of self-aggrandizement. But perhaps the most chilling discovery came from Vanessa's computer. In her browser history, investigators found months of research into child psychology, specifically how long a child could survive without food and water, and what the signs of severe dehydration looked like. She'd also been researching my work schedule, my social media activity, and my personal life. She'd known exactly when I'd be busy with my big project, when I'd be most likely to delay checking on Tina, and how to time everything perfectly to maximize Tina's suffering while minimizing the risk of permanent damage. There were also searches for how to forge handwriting, statute of limitations, child endangerment, and parental rights after criminal conviction. She'd been planning not just the crime itself, but how to minimize the consequences for herself if things went wrong. The most disturbing search was from just 2 days before she'd left for Cabo, Child Protective Services emergency custody procedures. Detective Martinez showed me this evidence in his office, and I had to excuse myself to throw up in the bathroom. The level of calculation, the complete lack of maternal instinct, the willingness to potentially kill her own child for money and convenience, it was beyond anything I could have imagined. I've been doing this for 15 years, Detective Rowan Lee told me. I've seen a lot of terrible things. But this level of premeditation against a child, by their own mother. It's one of the worst cases I've worked. During this investigation period, I was also dealing with the practical realities of suddenly becoming a guardian to a traumatized 7-year-old. The state had placed Tina in emergency foster care immediately after the incident, but I was able to get temporary custody within 2 weeks after extensive background checks and home evaluations. The foster family, the Johnsons, were wonderful people who'd been caring for Tina with incredible gentleness and patience. But she'd been through so much trauma that she was afraid to trust anyone new. When I first picked her up, she was clutching a small stuffed elephant that the Johnsons had given her. She wouldn't let go of it, and she flinched every time I reached toward her. She's been having nightmares, Mrs. Evelyn Whitaker told me quietly. She wakes up crying about being locked in dark places. And she's been hoarding food, hiding crackers and fruit in her pockets and under her pillow. The first few nights at my house were heartbreaking. Tina would wake up screaming, and when I'd go to comfort her, she'd cower in the corner asking if she was going to be locked up again. I'll be good, she'd whisper. I promise I'll be quiet. Please don't lock me up. It took weeks of patience, therapy, and consistent care for her to begin trusting that she was safe. The child psychologist, Dr. Hannah Patel, explained that Tina's trauma responses were completely normal for what she'd been through. Children who've been imprisoned by their caregivers often develop what we call hypervigilance, Dr. Foster explained. They're constantly watching for signs that they're about to be hurt or abandoned again. It's exhausting for them, but it's also a survival mechanism. Slowly, with professional help and a lot of love, Tina began to heal. She started sleeping through the night. She stopped hoarding food. She began to laugh and play like a normal child. But there were still moments that broke my heart. Once, when I was running late for work and speaking quickly to give her instructions for the babysitter, she started crying and said, "Are you mad at me? Are you going to go away and not come back?" Another time, when I closed the door to use the bathroom, she panicked and started pounding on it, screaming that she was sorry and begging me not to leave her alone. These incidents reminded me constantly of what Vanessa had done, not just the physical neglect, but the psychological torture of convincing a child that being abandoned was their fault for not being good enough. The therapy sessions were difficult for both of us. Tina had to work through her trauma, and I had to learn how to be a parent to a child who'd been systematically abused. I'd never had children of my own, and suddenly I was responsible for helping a deeply wounded little girl learn to trust the world again. Dr. Hannah Patel helped me understand that my own anger and grief were normal too. I was mourning not just what Vanessa had done to Tina, but what she'd done to David's memory, to our family, and to the life that Tina should have had. "You're allowed to be angry," she told me. "What happened to Tina was monstrous. But you're also allowed to heal and move forward. She needs you to be strong and stable, not consumed by rage." It was during one of these therapy sessions that Tina first talked about the day I found her. She'd been making progress in her individual sessions, but this was the first time she'd spoken about it with me present. "I thought I was going to die," she said quietly, not looking at either of us. "I was so thirsty, and my tummy hurt so much. I kept thinking maybe if I was really, really good, Mommy would come let me out." Dr. Foster gently encouraged her to continue. "But then I remembered what Daddy used to say. He said that if I was ever scared and he wasn't there, I should think about Aunt Lena, because she loved me and would always take care of me." I started crying then, and Tina looked up at me with those big brown eyes that were so much like David's. "Daddy was right," she said. "You did take care of me." That was the moment I knew we were going to be okay. Not immediately, not without more work and healing, but eventually. We were going to be a family. The investigation also revealed that Vanessa had been abusing Tina in other ways for months before the incident. Neighbors reported hearing the child crying at unusual hours, and several people had noticed that Tina seemed unusually quiet and withdrawn whenever they saw her with Vanessa. The pediatrician who examined Tina after the incident found evidence of chronic malnutrition and signs of previous neglect, old bruises that had healed, and what appeared to be marks consistent with prolonged confinement. This wasn't a one-time incident, Dr. Michael Harrison told the court. This child had been systematically abused for an extended period. The locked room was just the culmination of ongoing neglect and abuse. This information added additional charges to Vanessa's case and helped explain why Tina had been so compliant during her imprisonment. She'd been conditioned to believe that abuse was normal, that fighting back would only make things worse. Learning about this pattern of abuse made me feel even more guilt about not recognizing the signs earlier. I'd noticed that Tina seemed quieter during family gatherings, but I'd attributed it to normal grief over losing her father. I'd seen that she was thinner than she used to be, but Vanessa had explained it away as a picky eating phase. Dr. Hannah Patel helped me understand that this guilt was also normal but ultimately unproductive. Abusers are very skilled at hiding their behavior, she explained. They're particularly good at explaining away signs of abuse in ways that sound reasonable to people who aren't trained to look for these patterns. You couldn't have known without access to information that Vanessa was deliberately hiding from you. Still, I promised myself that I would never again ignore my instincts about a child's welfare. If something seemed wrong, I would investigate, even if it meant being seen as overprotective or interfering. The trial itself was a media circus. Vanessa's defense team tried to paint her as a woman driven to desperate measures by grief and financial stress. They argued that she'd never intended for Tina to be seriously harmed, that she'd miscalculated the timing. The prosecution painted a different picture, a narcissistic woman who saw her daughter as a burden and her sister-in-law as a threat to her carefully constructed victim narrative. Tina, thankfully, was too young to testify, but the evidence spoke for itself. The timeline Vanessa had written out in her own handwriting. The practice sheets where she'd been learning to copy my writing. The hotel records proving she'd lied about her location. The recorded phone calls where she tried to manipulate me. Most damning of all was a journal investigators found in her house, where she'd written extensively about her resentment toward Tina and her jealousy of my relationship with David. One entry, dated a week before her vacation, read, "Lena thinks she's so much better than me. She thinks she would be a better mother to Tina than I am. Maybe it's time to let her prove it. Maybe it's time for everyone to see what kind of person she really is when she's under pressure." Vanessa was convicted of child endangerment, attempted murder, fraud, and filing a false police report. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I was awarded full custody of Tina. The transition wasn't easy. Tina had been through severe trauma, and it took months of therapy for her to begin trusting that she was safe. She had nightmares about being locked in dark rooms. She hoarded food in her bedroom. She flinched when adults raised their voices. But children are resilient, and with love, patience, and professional help, she began to heal. She's 9 now, and while she still has some anxiety issues, she's a happy, healthy child who loves to read and play soccer. She doesn't remember much about that terrible day, which is probably for the best. She asks about her mother sometimes, and I tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways, that her mother was sick and made some very bad choices, but that none of it was Tina's fault. Vanessa sends letters from prison occasionally, which I don't read but keep locked in a safe deposit box in case Tina ever wants to see them when she's older. The letters that arrive at my house are addressed to both of us, with return addresses that alternate between Vanessa's full name and just Mom. I can see through the envelopes that they're written in that same careful handwriting she used to forge my suicide note, still practicing, still manipulating, still trying to control the narrative even from behind bars. Sometimes I wonder if she's learned anything from this experience, if she feels any genuine remorse for what she put her daughter through. But then I remember how she tried to bargain with me that first night, how she was more concerned about her own reputation than Tina's well-being, how she'd spent months planning to destroy both our lives for her own benefit. The truth is, Vanessa is exactly who she always was, a narcissist who saw other people as objects to be used for her own purposes. David had figured it out before he died. I just wish he'd lived long enough to protect his daughter from her. But Tina is safe now, and that's what matters. Last month, she asked me why her mother did what she did. I told her the same thing I tell myself when the anger threatens to overwhelm me. Some people are broken in ways that can't be fixed, and the best thing we can do is protect ourselves and the people we love from their destruction. She nodded solemnly and then asked if we could make pancakes for breakfast. Life goes on. Children heal. And sometimes, the good guys actually win. Vanessa will be eligible for parole in 10 years. I've already started documenting everything, preparing for the day when she might try to convince a parole board that she's changed, that she deserves another chance. I have a safe full of evidence that says otherwise. And I have a daughter to protect.